everyone, my name is Ranger Elizabeth from the Parklands of Floyd's Fork, and today we're going to answer the question, how does the earth change shape? Right now we're standing at Floyd's Fork Creek. We are standing next to a creek that's in a small valley. If I look up on this side, I see that there's a hill going in that direction, and if I turn over to the other side, we can also see that there's a hill in that direction. So this creek has carved out a valley. So this creek here is a great example of how the earth changes shape. So while this area used to be flat, this creek moved along the surface of the earth and carved a little valley. So the earth changes shape because wind and water move over the surface and pick up and break earth materials as they go. So some examples of earth materials include rocks, sand, and dirt. So there are two earth processes that we see here at the Parklands that have really shaped the area around the creek. One is called weathering. Weathering occurs when wind or water takes a big rock and breaks it into smaller rocks. It can also do this with dirt, sand, or even trees. The second earth process is called erosion, and that's when water or wind picks up things like sand, rocks, or dirt and moves them from one place to another place. So let's look at an example. I'm standing on the edge of the creek and we're going to watch how erosion happens. So right now the water's pretty clear and we can see how there's rocks and sand and dirt that lies at the bottom of the creek. If I put my hand in the water and mess it up a little bit, we can see that mud forms. That mud is then picked up and carried downstream by the water. So this is called erosion. The water is picking up the sediments, in this case, sand and dirt, and moving it downstream. We can see examples of erosion as we walk near the creek. So here we have a tree with some roots, and water has swept away all of the sediment around that tree and its roots. So just by moving over the land, this creek has eroded away an area around the trees. Today, the water's moving pretty slow, so we don't really see erosion happening a lot in front of our eyes. But erosion and weathering can happen a lot more quickly if we have something like a flood. So a couple of weeks ago, we had lots and lots of rain and the creek flooded. So let's look at some footage of the creek from that day. You may notice a couple of things about this video. First, you may see how quickly this water is flowing. This is after a pretty big rainstorm. Another thing you might notice is how the water is no longer clear. Instead, it kind of looks brown and dirty. That's because this water has picked up dirt, rocks, and sand and is moving it from one place to another. We can also see how it's broken this tree and it's carrying it down the river. This is a good example of weathering and erosion. So here in the Parklands we have creeks and we also have ponds and even some small lakes. These are all different types of water bodies that we see around Kentucky. This entire landscape was formed just from this water carving through the land, through the processes of erosion and weathering. In other areas of the United States, rivers can carve out many different types of landforms. Think about the Grand Canyon. There we see huge cliffs that are formed just because the river has eroded away the sides. So water can also form different shapes on Earth, such as hills, mountains, and valleys. Thanks for joining me today, and Click through to the next video as we build a watershed.